Okay, in this demonstration, I want to show you how you can start to put together your spot color. And first of all, I've got the documentation template open for phase 4. And you'll see here that off in the right side, we have in our layer panel, we have some different stuff here. So for instance, if you wanted to look at what was on artboard 1, you could just toggle it on and off to make sure that you can see what's there. Artboard 2 is here, and if you were to scroll over, artboard 3 is, is right there. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to figure out how to, get your Pantone stuff together. So if you were to, have a mark over here on the left, on the right, on the second artboard, then that might help you, sort of understand maybe what some good points of inspiration are. You can either start to do some of this development in separate Illustrator files, or if you really want to, you can start to also develop it right here. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is look at what I need to provide, at least for my mark. Let's start with that. All right, so what the first thing says is that you want to have a warm mark set and a cool mark set, and then you're going to put whatever you figure out over here for your Pantone legends. You'll paste that there too. So let's just first of all, let's get started by unlocking this the second artboard layer for just a second, and I'm going to hide this, where it's got the information. I'm just going to hide that, and I'll lock it so that it doesn't change. And I can go ahead and copy my other mark that I have over here. So if I go over here, I can take the mark that I already have, I'll copy that, and then I'll jump back over here, and I'm going to paste it inside of the Artboard 2 layer. So I'll just paste that there. And then you see automatically it pastes my group in, and it's got, my stuff here. And I'm going to scale it a bit, and you want to make sure that you're placing it in such a way that it is going to provide enough room for the other materials down here. So this is my regular mark, and then I want to have one that's for a cool palette and one that's for a warm palette. So let's go ahead and duplicate that. All right. And the next thing I want to do is I want to also paste in my emblem. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here, and then you'll see, well, before I do that actually, let's go ahead and let's name these. If I turn this off, we'll say cool mark, and then we'll say warm mark. Okay, and then let's move this stroke panel. And I'm going to select this artboard so that I'm not accidentally pasting inside one of these other marks. So, and then I've already copied, you didn't see me do it, but I've already copied my emblem in here. So I'm going to paste that into the clipboard, and we will make it smaller. And I want to kind of approximate the size of this. So, we'll move that down then. And so this will be my emblem. And, so I might end up making all of these a little bit smaller so I have enough room for my color swatch, and then I'll duplicate this over here. In fact, yeah, no, we'll just do it that way. And so now I've got two groups over here. So this one is going to be, let's make sure that that's the right one. So we'll call this cool emblem, and we'll call this one warm emblem. All right. And then what we can do, like I said before, is we can select all of these, and let's just make them a little bit smaller. And I'm going to sort of make them smaller from the center. That way I can select both. I can select these, and then I can select these separately. Yeah, I guess I can move all of them up. And then that gives us a little bit more space for the color panels that go below. And we still might even want to make these a little bit, just a little bit smaller, so that we can have more space. And then these can come down just a little bit. All right, and that gives us room for our two colors down here and then also down here. All right, and so I think that that'll work. Let's scoot that over just a little, maybe there. All right, I think that'll work pretty well. And in fact, let's just scoot that over so that they have plenty of separation. I think that'll be all right. So that's how you can get your marks on, and then later, like with your patterns, you'll do the same thing. I'm not going to go through every step of this, but we can get this started at least. And so now you've got your marks there, but you're going to end up applying color. So this is at least the way that you can get your marks on there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lock this layer so that, and I can call it let's call it artboard 1, and yeah, it says marks at the end. Okay, and now I want to get my picture files in here so that I can start using sample assignment color and so on. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go to the first artboard, make sure that's the right one, and we'll open that up. And then the other thing too is that you'll see that we've got all these different objects here. I'm not going to just hide all of those. I'm going to unlock this actually, and then you can see what is what. All right, and because then later you can use some of these things. I'll lock the line, for instance. So that's the top. So here we'll say warm 3 color like this, and then this group is the warm, say warm 2 color, and then yeah, we'll just leave that alone for the moment. And then this one is cool 3 color, and then this one would naturally be the cool 2 color, and it would be plus tints and so on. All right. All right, and then these are the ones, these image ones, we can lock these so that they don't get moved, but then we can just turn the eyeballs off when we're ready. But this gives you an idea kind of like where you can place your images. So let's go ahead and put our images in. And I'm going to go up here to File and Place. All right, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use the cool color. And I realize, I just realized that I did all of this backwards. I did warm color first and cool color, but it doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So I'm going to go ahead and place my cool color just to be consistent with what I'm choosing to do. And then, all right, and so we can place that here. And so there's my cool color, and again, it doesn't say warm here, so I just only set it right there. So I'm just going to flip it. I'm going to do my cool colors first. So it's really up to you if you want to do warm versus cool first. It doesn't matter. But I want to be consistent because I did my blue color first over here, or my cool color over here first, and then the warm is the one on the right. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to go and do another place, and I'm going to put my warm color inspiration photograph in here, and I'll just draw this out. And this one's a little bit of a larger image, and so it's okay that it doesn't perfectly fit, so I can take this one and I can just sort of drop it down so it's at least centered with this other one. And if you wanted, they don't have to be exactly the same size. If you wanted, you could also do something like you could make this larger, and let's make it go from the center so that it fills the whole spot, and so that it matches. That's okay. And then this one we can scoot it over a little, and so you could also do it like that if you wanted to. All right. The other thing is if it's got a sort of a weird size, you can also end up cropping it by putting a mask on it. So if you want to do that, for instance, like let's just say for a second that we turn the eyeball off of this, and let's go down here. Let's turn the eyeball off of this one too. And then what we can do is where we've got our image lock areas, all right, what we can do is just take right now I'm just going to draw an object that's the right size. And you see that over here, where it says rectangle up here, this is the rectangle that it drew. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn both of these on, right, this rectangle for my warm image, and I'm going to select them by holding down the Shift key and clicking these little circles over here. That way I know that I'm only selecting those two and nothing else. And then I can go over here, as long as the rectangle is on top of the picture, I can mask it properly. And I go over here to Object and Clipping Mask, Make, and then it automatically masks it to that specific size. And so that's all I need. And then the other thing that I want to do then, and then it creates a clipping group for me. And then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to select my photograph over here so that it draws in the right place, and I'm going to take my marquee tool or my object tool for the rectangle, and I'm going to draw so that it matches here too. Okay, and then this rectangle, I'm going to move it so that it's sitting here right on top of this picture. Again, I'm just going to select these two over in the layers panel, object, clipping mask, make. And so then at least they're the same size, and then it lines up here if you want it to look as nice as possible in your portfolio for your documentation. Okay. All right, and so now we've got some colors that we can sample from. So I can select one of these, but one of the things that you'll notice is that these are all grouped. If you look over here, you can see, oops, that's the wrong one. You can see that if I turn the eyeball off of the two color, in fact, let's stretch this out some so that you can see the full names. So we've got the cool 2-color. You'll see that those are grouped together. And if I want to try to get one of these, I have to go double click it to go into isolation mode. Now here's the problem, is that if I take the eyedropper tool and I start clicking around, you see that it's actually picking a very, very pale color that is also giving me something that's not realistic. Because if I were to get out, for instance, out of that, you can see that this color is not really representative of the color that's being selected up here. So let's try that again, and I'll give you a better example. So if I double click inside of here and I come over and let's just zoom in, and this is maybe where the darkest, maybe one of the darkest parts of the whole image is. See how pale that is? And then if we get out of isolation mode, you can see that that was a much darker blue, right? And so what we can do to avoid that problem then is we can go over and we need to take this cool color, it's the clip group, so we can call this cool image, right? And we'll call this one warm image, like that or something. So it's easier to understand. And I can take this cool color and I can actually drag it down into the cool 2-color group. And so now if I open this, expand this up, you see that at the top of this group there's actually the cool color, and it's the little clipping group with the mask. Okay, so now if I select over here, if I select this box, you see it selects everything including that picture. If I double click it and I select the box, this picture right here isn't going into like a screened back version of white on top. All right, so now what I can do is I can go back to my color picker. Now let's blow this up so we can get sort of a darker blue area, and we'll zoom back out. And so now we've got this this other color of blue, and I kind of like that color of blue. But one of the things that you should consider is that if I were to click this and take a look, I could make it more saturated if I wasn't happy with that color. And one of the things that you want to make sure you don't do is you don't move this slider, because then you're changing the hue, and that will get outside of the range of that blue. But you could pick something like this, to make it like a more saturated blue. You could also make it lighter, but let's just say we bring it over here to a higher level of saturation, and maybe that's what we're going to be happy with. All right. Now the other thing to think about too is that I could have chosen a really bright blue color, which is fine, like a light color. However, if I do that, you need to think about how it might be a problem with your printing if you want a darker version of blue later. And the reason is, even if I were to outline tints and shades, which I haven't done, I've only said that you're to use tints of a color down here, you'll notice that. The reason for that is that whenever you're printing with Pantone, the color is the color, right? Because the way that, if you remember back to what I've talked about in the lecture, is that there's a central warehouse or some centralized warehouses, right, where the Pantone colors are mixed with chemically balanced paints that have really very specific colors. And these things are formulas, and the reason for that is so that the color is always going to be the same color regardless of whether you're printing it with a printer in New York City versus a printer in France versus whatever, right? The color is going to always be the color. So that being said, if you only have one color to work with, and it's not like a process color like CMYK where you can sort of mix and you know, do different you know, kinds of levels of different colors to achieve new color, then you sort of have a problem in terms of flexibility. And as a result, Pantone color is pretty expensive because of its stability and reliability. And so a lot of times you'll have something that's like a one color print or a two color print, 3, 4, whatever. But the more colors you add, the more expensive it becomes. And also because every time you add a new color, it requires a whole nother, not only another ink, but a whole nother separation and so on. And so the thing that you sometimes can try to do is to provide tints. Now shades are more complicated because shades, to make something darker than the original color, you have to add black, right? Well, in process color and for color like CMYK, that's not a big deal because K is already one of the colors. So you can basically make anything darker. But when you're dealing with Pantone and you're dealing with a preset specific color, adding black means that black has to also be one of the designated colors. So if you wanted black as your other color, you would have to make that your second color. And then you would have to do that as an overprint where you've got dots on top of black to make something darker. But it's like not as difficult with doing tints because there's a presumption always that you're going to be printing on a white ground or white paper, white background, right? And what you can do is you can modify without adding any other additional colors. You can actually change the halftone pattern that, you know, the printer can set this up so that they can achieve certain colors with different Pantone tint options so that they can change the halftone pattern and it can look like a lighter color. For instance, let me show you this little workup. So if we take, this is just like some little workup of showing how your eyes will do visual blending. So if we take this dot set over here, let's blow this up. You can see that these dots are a tighter, smaller halftone pattern. And then if you increase the size a little bit and spread them out just a little bit, you know, you get this pattern, and then on the right you've got these lighter colors. And so you can see, if I zoom this out, this becomes sort of like what happens with your eyes and visual blending. Okay, I know that this is, you know, it's hard to see, we're on a screen and it does this weird moire effect, but the thing that you understand is that this bottom left corner is much denser and feels like a denser, deeper blue, whereas if you look at the one on the top here, I'll blow it up just a little bit. The top left, it's slightly less dense. The one on the top right it reads as a slightly darker blue than the one on the bottom right, right? So you get the sense that you can start to understand when you look at something like this, you can start to understand kind of how that would work easily with a single color and just changing the halftone pattern and how it gets printed. I mean, this is not a halftone pattern. This is just me like duplicating some dots of color in Illustrator, but you get the idea. I think you get the general idea. Okay. All right. So that being said, if you want black, you would need to designate black as a color. So that means that if you want a darker blue that can go into a lighter tint, then you want to probably start with a slightly deeper or darker blue. All right. And so the other thing that we can do now with that understanding is we can choose this, and you could either here choose a darker blue, like a really deep color. If you just wanted to have something that felt a little bit more monotone, you could do that, or we could make green our second color, and you could make a decision about how to use that later. But let's go ahead and take the color picker or the eyedropper, and then I'm going to zoom in and I'll get a nice bright part of the green. I think I actually like that one. It's one of the first ones that I picked right off the bat, but I mean, that's a green, right? But that's a darker green. I don't like that as much. I think I like this this brighter green that I chose originally. All right, and so I've got that to begin, you know, to get started. So those are my two color choices, and actually, if you think about that, that actually becomes sort of like a two color analogous option if you add added a third color, you could go into sort of even a paler green or almost yellow, and then it would be, you know, that analogous blend or a darker blue or something. But for now, we're going to do our 2 color spots with tints. Now, you see that there are some numbers printed up under here. That is because we need to be able to figure out what those numbers are after we do the conversions of these colors. And the other thing that I could do too is, you know, these 3 color Pantones that are down here, if I liked these 2 as a starting place, I could go ahead and create a basic, you know, CMYK swatch with these and apply 2 of those down here. So I can show my swatches. You can go up to Window and then come down here to Swatches. And then we've got this panel right here, and I can select my color that I want to take a swatch sample of, and then I can click this little icon that's like the new page icon. But what it'll do is it'll say, hey, I want to create a new swatch for you. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to create it as process color first, because it's not a bad idea to always have, you know, your process color as well as your Pantone colors. And the other thing that you could do too is also have an RGB version of it, but we're going to stick with process color CMYK right now. And I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And you see it added it down here, and it put like a little sort of white corner because it shows that it's a special swatch of mine. Then I'll come over here, do the same thing, and then I'll let it go ahead and show the CMYK values up there. All right. And then if I wanted to put these in a group, then I could go ahead and do that. And so I'm going to select both of them right now, and I can click on the new folder icon, and then for this color group, we'll call it, let's just call it 2 color cool CMYK. All right, and it grabbed my selected swatches and it put them in that folder. So now what's nice is that if I wanted to just pick from these 2 colors to add them down here later, I can just go and select these, and that's fine. The other things that I could do, if I knew for a fact that I definitely wanted these 2 colors as part of that, is that I could go ahead and convert this to Pantone, which I need to do anyway, and I'll create a Pantone group, and then I can just choose from those. All right. But if you know, later you could keep this document as a resource, and then you could always come back here to figure out what the Rgb conversions are, and you could have, you know, the Rgb values. And so if I double click this, you know, it pops this up like this, and I can either convert this directly. You see down here, it's got this little button, and then I can come down and find what I'm looking for, which is going to be color books right here. And then there are a whole bunch of different companies that do this. Pantone's just one of them, but we're going to stick with Pantone right now. And so if I go to Pantone, I'm going to choose CMYK coded if I wanted to keep this as CMYK. The other option would be I'm going to just do solid coded. So Pantone solid coded is going to be the 1 color choice that I was telling you about, where you have you know, the formula that's created. And this would also depend on, you know, what kind of paper you were printing on, but this is based on printing on coated paper. So if I were to select that, you see that it changes the options that I have here, and it would make a different kind of alignment. I'm going to hit on cancel for right now, but I just wanted to show you that you can also double click that to change the name. Now, the other thing that you can do too, all right, just so you know, is I can choose this. I'm going to choose these 2 things right here, and now if I were to go up to object, or excuse me, edit, not object, go to edit, and then go to edit colors and say recolor artwork, it's going to pop up with this, so that you can take something that was already designated with CMYK or RGB or whatever, and what it'll do is it'll show you what the new custom colors are going to be. If I click here again, it's that little button I was showing you before, go to color books, and then you're going to choose Pantone solid coded. All right, then what it's going to do is it's going to create these conversions for you. Sometimes the conversion color over here is not what you expect it to be. Okay, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. I'm not going to get into all of the really deeper, more specific things, this is a beginning class, but I want you to have an understanding of the basic Pantone stuff, right? And so if I click on OK, then I can come back over to my swatches panel over here, and you'll notice that it has these new two swatches with these little dots in that little bottom corner. So those are, if you were to double click it and look at one of them, you'll see that it's a book color, and it actually has the name of it up here. It's kind of grayed out, but it's a book color, and it is a Pantone color. So what we can do is we can, after we recolored the artwork, it automatically created those swatches. We can select both of those, and then we can hit the new folder icon, and we can say this to color cool, oops, Pantone, all right, so that we know that this is, and I could say Pantone coded, all right, so that we know that those are the coded swatches, all right, and so we've got these two swatches now set up, which is kind of nice, and so now again we can use this and anytime that we want to assign color to something, which is great because now it's stored in our swatch. All right, so if we want, I'm going to undock my swatch, actually, let's see, there, so that it's just off to the side. All right, and the other thing that we mentioned, I'm going to get out, see I'm still in isolation mode, I'm going to get out of here, and then if I had mentioned before, if I wanted to go ahead and get started with these 3 color, oh, and the other thing too, by the way, is that now I've got these Pantone colors over in my swatches, so if I wanted to, oh, oops, and by the way, that's what's going to happen if you have something selected and you click on a swatch. See, notice how everything turned green down here? That's what would happen. But anyway, so I'm going to deselect, and if I come over here, I can look at this, and then if I double click on the folder, I can hit this drop down menu and I can get the Pantone numbers that I need to change on my file right here. So where it says Pantone 7455C, that's going to be my blue one, and I'll go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do that. So we'll change this to, and if I just keep double clicking, I'll get to the text. All right, so we'll just put this down and we'll say let's do that, 7455C, and then this one is 368C. Okay, and so we know that those are now the Pantone colors, and then if we wanted, we could, you know, I'll copy this, and I'm in isolation mode, so I have to double click to get back out of it. So if I wanted to come back down in here, I could go ahead and type the numbers like there, and that would be C at the end. And then this other one is 7455C, okay? And then we don't know what the third one is yet. All right, but what we can do is while that one is selected, I can go ahead and click on this blue icon and it changes for me. And then this one, I'll click on the green Pantone and it changes. And so there we have it. That's how you can start to designate those colors. And then we'd have to pick this other one, and maybe we actually would want some sort of black, but you need to be specific about the black that you choose. All right, and then the other thing too is that we need to figure out what the tints are going to be over here. All right, so for doing our tint assignment, let me show you a kind of a cool thing. If you come up here, there's a little icon, it looks like a fan. If you click on that, it'll show you shades and tints, and that's your color guide. So if you don't see this little icon, this little fan icon, you're going to look for a panel under window that's called color guide, okay? And so the way that color guide works is that this little tiny little arrow, it's showing you the actual color. Anything below this on the left side is going to be a shade of that color. Anything on the right side above the color is going to be a tint of the color, so it gets brighter, right? And so anyway, these are the tints that you could create with that color. So that's where it would be kind of safe to come in here and say, all right, well, let's double click and let's go in here, and I'm going to choose that as the tint. I'll choose that as the next tint. That is the next one, and so on, right? And then if I come over here, this would be my green, right? You see how that works? That's pretty straightforward, okay? And so that's how you can designate them in a really systematic way. All right, and then so you've got one color set. And the last thing you need to do is still come down here and figure out what you want to be in, you know, either pick from here, or, you know, you could also, let me show you another little thing you could do. So I could go inside of here and I could choose, I'm not choosing tints or shades. I'm going to go back to my swatches. So let's grab that. Okay. And I could assign it, let's say that I wanted to assign it the green Pantone. And I could go based off of that. And I could get a slightly different green, for instance. If I wanted to come in here, I could go based off of that and choose something that, you know, maybe was a little bit of a brighter green. So it's still in the green range, but maybe it starts to move a little bit closer to yellow. So there's some different things, like if I wanted this to have a really bright feeling, the other thing I could do is I could use this opportunity to go a little bit darker, to have something that was in a darker range and it's more neutral. So there's some different choices, like if I wanted something that felt like almost a gray neutral, I could do something like that. So there's some different choices, and just because you pick these at first, you know, once you start to go color your object, if you decide that you really don't like that, you can still change your palettes up and stuff. But let's see what that looks like. That actually might work. And if we wanted to test that again, we can maybe, let's make it a little bit more saturated possibly, so that we start to get some of that green in there. Maybe need to come up a little bit in brightness to get some of the saturation to show. And you can see the new color right here is, it's not going to change down here, but you can see the color changing up here. So like, for instance, if we wanted to do something like that, you know, we could decide if we like these three colors, that might be good. The other thing is that you could have easily also grabbed that probably from somewhere in here if you wanted to be, you know, really consistent with the picture, but you don't have to be perfectly consistent. You can deviate some. We want, you know, the point is that you want to be happy with your choices. And so this color has not been converted to Pantone, and it's actually a process color. So if we wanted at this point, we could actually add that swatch. Let's go ahead and make a new swatch, and then you'll see that it's going to get added as a CMYK color. And the thing is, I don't want to just drag this into here, because if you remember, this is our 2-color. If you hover over it, you can see that it's the 2-color cool CMYK. So what I actually want to do is I can select this, and let's drag it down here. And I just duplicated that CMYK. And here, we're going to put it down here. And what we'll do is I'll double click it and I'll rename that. And I'll call it 3-color cool CMYK. And then say yes, that's fine. Okay, and then now what I can do is I can drag that into my 3-color CMYK, and you can see the difference automatically whenever I hover that one versus hovering that one. All right, so I've got my different swatch folders, and so now to get a Pantone version of that, what I need to do, oops, and I accidentally must have changed it somehow. While I have this selected, I'm going to click on that again. And while this is selected, I'll go up here to Edit Colors, Recolor Artwork. Remember, this is how we do Pantone conversion. And then I'll come down here to this little button right here. And I'll choose Color Books, and I'll do Pantone. Let's see, where is it? Solid Coated right there. And say OK. And see, it created a new swatch for me right here. And then this one, again, if I want to keep my 2-color option, then that's fine. I can click this and I can drag that to the new icon, and it creates a duplicate for me. Let's just drop it down here. And I can take my new swatch and I can put it into that. And we need to give it a new name because it's not the copy anymore. It's now going to be 3-color cool Pantone, and we're going to get rid of the word copy. Make sure coded. There we go. And yes, okay. And so now we've got these different ones, and actually I forgot to get rid of the word copy on this one too, so I'll get rid of that. There. All right. And then if you wanted to add the tints to the 2-color options, you could also do that. And again, you would easily enough do it just by coming over here and selecting each of these things, and you could make a new swatch and then just drag it in. Just do it really fast so that you can see how simple it is. And so this is the Pantone 3-color. All right. And so we're going to drag it into this one. Okay, and I need to name this, rename it. So this would be 2-color Pantone coated plus tints, right? Something like that. So you want to try to keep your naming conventions consistent, so that you can definitely see what's happening each time. So if I do that, again, I'm going to go ahead and add a new swatch, and then here I'm going to add a new swatch, and see, while I have it selected, it automatically adds that for me. So there's that option too. All right, and then I can also come here, oops, and then for some reason it didn't keep it selected. So let's select that again, and we'll add the new swatches for each one. Okay. All right, and so that's how you can create these things, and you would basically do the exact same process for the warm color. So you can see this is going to be a little bit time consuming. Oh, and the other thing I failed to do is I did not write the name of this down, and I should have. So let's do this. We're going to go back into our 3-color Pantone coated. Let's go in here and we'll get the name of that. So that is 5743C. That's what it was. So let's go ahead and type that in. So it's 5743C. The usefulness of having all of this like in a document like this is that it just outlines this for everybody who might need to work on the project. All right, and it's perfect for that exact reason. All right, and don't forget to continuously save your stuff. Anyway, go ahead and do the same thing on yours for both cool and for warm, and then once you've gotten your colors selected, let's move over to showing you how you can apply the color to your objects.